Hello, humans. Thought I'd talk about something a little bit different because something that's been on my mind a bit more recently. And yeah, also sorry for the break if you're bothered about that. I was just doing some stuff. So yeah, let's get into it. Motorcycling is one of those hobbies that is obviously quite dangerous. A lot of people kind of say, people around me don't want me to get into motorcycling because you always hear these stories from people like, oh, my cousin like sadly passed away, or did their cruciate or can't walk properly, or had to have all these operations because they crashed their motorbike. Is it something dangerous? Yes. Is it something that's kind of in your control? Absolutely. So the first major stigma I want to get out the way is a lot of people say motorcycling is dangerous. Now, yes, is it more dangerous than riding a car? Yeah, but also it's quite a lot down to you. Now, the only times it aren't is, you hear these horror stories of someone that's very approachable, that's driving normally, and there's an old person that pulls out a junction, or some young driver that, is driving how they shouldn't be on a small country road, and, bang, lights out, or whatever it might be, something horrific happens, and it's just not your fault. Is that a part of life, to be honest? Yes. Will you have that in cars? Yes. Is it going to be the same extent in cars? Probably not, because you're a smaller target and people sometimes just don't see you. Can you ride defensively and get over that, though? Absolutely. And there's a lot of things that you can do as a motorcyclist that make you more visible, whether it's a brighter helmet. Some people like to drive full beam on during the daytime just so you're extra visible. Wearing infrared or, sorry, not infrared, high vis, that kind of stuff. It's all things you can do. So what I will say in terms of safety, is it something that you need to be aware of? Yes. Are there definite strategies to make it easier for yourself not to get hit? Absolutely. If you're going to drive like a helmet, you have to accept, and you're going to know this when you're driving like that, there is a higher chance that you're going to die. Now, is it more fun? Yeah. Is it more dangerous? Yes. If you're driving with a pillion, are you going to drive like that? No, you really shouldn't. Are you going to try and show off sometimes, maybe because you're around other bikers, or, you're with your mates or whatever? Maybe. You shouldn't, right? At the end of the day, it's down to you how you drive. Now, are you going to feel peer pressure sometimes to drive a certain way? If you're like that, then I'd recommend giving it a little bit of time before you step on a bike, or certainly just think about yourself. Give yourself a minute before you get on that bike, how you're going to ride. And I know sometimes spur of the moment stuff happens, especially if you're in a group of bikers, you don't want to be left behind. You don't want that kind of stuff to do. The best way you can avoid getting into danger, getting into trouble, is being good at driving. Now, what I recommend, just human to human, is getting proficient with a motorbike before you try anything. Before you're trying popping wheelies or trying to, really get down low when you're cornering and all that kind of stuff, you need to be good at riding. Don't try and be, whoever it might be, Giuseppe Rossi, whatever, the second you get a bike, because you won't be. It's like any skill. You need time to be able to kind of gauge where the biting point of your bike is, how far you can push it, how far you're comfortable with going. That is the main thing. Drive like an old person for the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks you get your first bike, because it isn't going to be something that you're just going to be able to throw yourself in at. Now, if you've already got experience with bikes, you've got biking in the family, maybe you're just in an area where a lot of people ride motorcycles, you might go in with a bit of arrogance thinking, yeah, well, I know what I'm doing. Act like you don't. That's the best advice I can give. Act like you don't, because then you can figure things out, you'll learn the long way, and to be honest, what I'd recommend more than anything is going on YouTube, going on any social media, talking to people about techniques, Maybe ask if you've got people around you that bike, and even if you don't these days, it's not a big deal, but ask them, or put into Google the questions you have. What's like the most dangerous things you can do on a bike, and then never doing them? What are things that bikers recommend? What are things that you will just feel out? And once you've got these habits that are kind of, ideally good habits, it will be second nature. So if you do, God forbid, get into a bad situation where you have to slam on the brakes, smack the kill switch, or, get to a controlled stop, or maybe even an emergency stop, you will have these kind of basics that you're able to do. Now, one of the main things that you'll get when you first get a bike is that you want to test it. Realistically, you want to see how fast it can go flat out. You're going to want to see, all this kind of stuff. It's what we do, right? Make sure you're in a safe area to do that the first time. Once you know what your bike's up to, once you know how you drive, and once you're comfortable with all that as a new biker, then you can start testing it a little bit. Now, would I recommend going crazy? You'll know how well you can control it. And this is going to sound like bad advice. The only way you're going to know how well you can control it in these tight situations is by being in them, to be honest. And it's not a situation you're going to want to be in. So if you're a really nervous type, or you're someone that gets worked up easily, just keep it down, because you might get into a situation where you get flustered and you accidentally press something, and then you're on your back, or God forbid, you're upstairs. It's not things that you want to be in. It's not situations you want to be in. Learn slowly. Take your time. And if you've got L plates on, a lot of people are going to be responsive to that. What I'd recommend as well is, if you can, the first few times you've got your L plates on, go out with other people that have got more experience than you. Ideally get mics up or something, have a way of communicating with them, so then you can ask them these questions. Go on a route that you've already driven around. Go with someone that you're super, super comfortable with the first few times, because that will give you the skills to then go on and, kind of be more comfortable with, like, road signs, for example. Because for the first few weeks of driving, you're probably going to be kind of just figuring out how the bike works. Like, just even the basics of, like, stopping, hill starts, all this stuff. There's so much stress when you first go out because it's so much that you don't know. After a bit of time, getting used to the bike, then I'd recommend, going to other places, slightly more further afield places, or places you're maybe not as comfortable going, because eventually you'll need to do that. Eventually you'll be going to places you don't know inside out. You will be following a sat nav or road signs, whatever it might be, and you need to, be more aware. That awareness comes with just doing it, to be honest. And if you already drive a car, you'll probably have a bit of that awareness that you're kind of more acute to things. Another big thing I'd say is, certainly if you're in the UK, CBT, you don't need to know road signs to do a CBT. You need that for the theory in the Mod 1 and Mod 2. But you don't actually need that. I would recommend, as fast as possible, just getting the DVLA app or whatever the equivalent in your country is, and just learning general road practices and the safety side of it. There are a few things on there, like chest compressions and CPR, which obviously are very useful, but they're not necessarily road things that you need to know. I would recommend locking in, getting down, learning about all this stuff, because motorcycling, for me, is freedom. And if you're into biking, if you've got a motorbike, you're probably feeling the same way. It is the best thing in the world for me. It is better than any drug I've ever taken. It's better than any. It is, for me, the best thing ever. Now, it's very easy to lose a lot of time to it. It's a lot of kind of social elements as well that will open up doors for. And if that's what you're into, if that's what you want, go for it. If you just want something easy to commute on that's cheaper than a car and it's kind of all that side, then that's also great. What I would recommend, biggest overall though, be safe, right? Make sure that your everything is just ready, is secure. Like when you first get your bike as well, you'll probably drop it a few times. You'll probably make some stupid mistakes. You might forget to lock it properly. You might forget that you can lock the handlebars. Just make sure you look up things about your bike specifically before you get it. Maybe look up a few videos. You should do anyway, because it's probably a few £1,000s or at least a few hundred to buy a motorbike. It's a fairly big investment. So you don't want to just go grabbing the first thing you see because it looks good. Really kind of, make sure that's the thing for you, that kind of sounds good to you. And just, figure it out. That's the best thing you can do, is getting on the bike, bum on seat, the best training you can possibly do. And the one big thing I will always say, obviously, you've got to check at junctions. That's the big one, T-junctions especially. But junctions are a big one. One that people forget about a lot, roundabouts. Always shoulder check when you're going a roundabout, even if you're just assuming, you can't trust the mirrors. Do a full shoulder check, either side, depending on which way you're going, just to make sure someone's not coming out on the inside or outside of you and gonna, ram you, because it's curtains for you if they do, to be honest. If it's at a roundabout, they hit you at 20, 30, whatever they might be going around that roundabout, you're going to be sliding. You're potentially going to be, worse than sliding. So just check that one. That is the big one that I can give you, to be honest. Obviously, as well, a lot of people forget, this is even experienced riders, just to tap the brake, the foot brake, when you're coming into, areas you need to slow down from. Because a lot of people, despite the fact that it is a fairly obvious thing for bikers to check, the front wheel, a lot of people sometimes forget that you're reducing your speed, and they need to be warned visibly through the back brake that you're slowing down. So that's another one. Just make sure everything is visible. So not only if, God forbid you do get hit, you've got that insurance claim, but also the fact that it does actually help you, when people are behind you, potentially dicking around, not paying attention. Because the thing that a lot of people will forget is obviously you're on a bike, you're feeling the elements, you're feeling the wind, you're feeling the world around you. You've got good visibility, you're locked in, right? Quite a lot of people in cars are fannying around. They're basically sitting in a living room, right? So their attention span is probably going to be lower than yours. They're probably going to be a bit less attentive unless they are a kind of real, anxious driver, which in this sense is kind of good in a way that they're, properly checking their mirrors, they're looking out and they're making sure they're not, doing anything stupid. But yeah, big thing, just make sure you're visible to other drivers, make sure you're doing all the right things. And you really shouldn't be getting hit, in which case, freak accidents happen. But I think if that's the big thing that's stopping you from motorcycling, and you are a bit like, what's the word, neurotic, it probably isn't for you, but give it a try. I would always recommend, if there's that bit of you that wants to get into motorcycling, do it. Because it is freedom like no other. And it, for me, is the best thing since sliced bread. It's better than sliced bread. It's the best thing ever. So yeah, just make sure you're, financially ready. Make sure you're, got the time. And to be honest, if you're just doing it as a, A to B, then I'd recommend it. It is good. And if you want to go deeper than that, go deeper than that. And if you don't, it's a great way to get around. So yeah, anyway, that's that. I feel like I've gone on a bit too long there, but this is something I care a lot about. So yeah, happy riding, safe riding, and yeah, enjoy. What's that?